Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at one of the classic emergencies. I can't get my landing gear down and I have to put the plane on the ground anyway. So the way we're going to do this one is we're going to be borrowing our Diamond 62 here. We've got it at kind of an awkward angle. We're going to be landing over here in Bradley International Airport. Now one of the things that makes these kinds of approaches extra tricky is the fact that you've got to get the propellers to stop spinning. Now one of the problems that we've been experiencing at Microsoft recently is the fact that the propellers will not spin even when you set them to be feathered. I think the theme this week with all my videos has been, it doesn't work. That being said, we're going to make do with what we have here. So we're going to assume that our propellers have been successfully feathered here. I shut off the master switches, I shut off the fuel, I set everything under the sun. Keep in mind, you don't have to feather anything until you get a lot closer to the ground. So when you do a gear up landing, it's important to note that one of the toughest parts of the landing is landing as flat as possible. Now normally when we land the plane, we've got that nice pretty little flare in. What we basically want to do is integrate ourselves into the ground effect just a couple inches off the ground, and we want this plane to gently and as gingerly as possible make contact with the ground directly. If we try to do this at really high speeds, of course we end up making all sorts of nasty sparks and we get all the turbulence. If we do this at low speed, we end up coming down on the tail. Now, if we come down on the tail, of course, that's going to be actually worse for us because then we're going to be hitting a spot where we're not going to be able to safely go ahead and put the plane down. We're probably going to strike, we'll do a couple little spins, and the whole plane will get really nasty really quickly. So we've got ourselves up nice and high. Of course, we could shut these engines off a lot later in normal situations, but for this particular one, this works pretty well for us. We're going to integrate some good old-fashioned glider maneuvers here to kind of suck up that last bit of energy for us as we're making our way down to the ground. Again, normally these propellers would be completely feathered, but for whatever reason, Microsoft is, like I said, they're on my not-so-happy list this week. If I needed an excuse to go back to X-Plane, right? One thing I'm not going to do, though, is I'm not going to do a 360 here because I'm afraid of how much energy it's going to cost me to do that turn. There we go. Go ahead and cancel this turn out, and we're now ready to make our contact. So here's what we need to check. We need to make sure everything is off. We do not want any sort of situation where we're going to cause the aircraft to cause any sort of spark, so we want to discourage that behavior completely. We want to make sure our gear are up, because obviously they can't come down. We want to make sure that our airspeed is somewhat reasonable, and we're going to try to hit the ground as flat as possible. So we need to come in a little fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself really close to the ground, and you're basically going to fly this plane just a couple inches off the ground until it runs out of energy. If you feel it start to sink, again, just let the plane come down on its own. This requires a lot of discipline. Those propellers are about to seize up in about a second. All right, looks good. Again, obviously, the more runway you have, the better this will go. Plane starts getting a little heavy. Just let the nose come down. We are on the ground, and now go ahead and use very careful application of the rudder in order to safely keep this thing straight on the runway. So now I sit here, I do the little bouncy, sparky spark thing, and we're down. So again, just a quick review. Make sure that the engines are off. Make sure the propellers are not turning, which unfortunately we can't simulate. And double check to make sure that when you do come down, you come in a little tiny bit fast so you can come down as smooth as possible. Enjoy.